Happy New Year, everybody. I hope it was a blessed 2025. And if it was a tough one, I'm sure 26 is a bounce back year for you. In the spirit of the new year, for those of you seeking change and growth, or perhaps just more space and time to engage in what matters most, join the club. You're in the right place. To kick off 2026, I'd like to share a special interview I recently had with somebody who's been instrumental in my own personal growth journey for over 8 years now. He's appeared on popular podcasts like The Tim Ferriss Show and Chris Williamson's Modern Wisdom, and his New York Times best-selling book, Getting Things Done, even appears in one of everyone's favorite shows, The Office.
Hey, study buddies!
Oh, okay.
Getting things done. Awesome.
It's all about finding ways to make yourself more efficient. Life hacking, baby. This morning, I brushed my teeth in the shower, saved myself 90 seconds, which I just used to explain this to you. Damn it!
In fact, if there were a Mount Rushmore of most influential people on my life thus far, he is undoubtedly there. That's not the only list he's appeared on throughout his decorated career. He's been named among the top 25 leadership and management experts, for example. It's possible for a person to have an overwhelming number of things to do and still function productively with a clear head and a positive sense of relaxed control. That is just one of endless nuggets peppered throughout his principles. His ideas have deeply improved the way I manage my life and work, and his concepts have helped me develop a level of clarity that once felt unreachable. It's not every day you get to check something off your bucket list, and I hate to brag about my New Year's resolutions already being complete, but don't worry, it's all downhill for me from here. And I'm confident this man will help you reach your goals too. And now, my interview with David Allen. Welcome to another episode of the Kevin Lunsford podcast, where I like to talk all things self-improvement, personal growth, and exploring ways to create the space to live our most authentic and fulfilling lives. Today, I've got a very special guest. He is author of multiple books, but perhaps most notably, the international New York Times bestseller, Getting Things Done. Time magazine once called this book the defining self-help business book of its time. Having sold millions of copies and being translated into over 30 languages, his work has become nothing short of a global phenomenon. Regarded as one of the top experts in productivity for at least 4 decades now, his methodology has improved the business of countless organizations, as well as the lives of high-profile individuals, and even classrooms as young as elementary. And now, the man who perhaps needed no introduction, I'm delighted to introduce David Allen. David, appreciate you taking the time.
Thanks for the invitation, Kevin. I'm happy to be here. So happy to just make this a conversation between you and me. Any questions you want to have for me, anything I might be able to share with your potential audience, absolutely fine. But maybe you should start out with some of your history about GTD and how you came across this, because you sent me an email that was just so wonderful. I love getting emails like the one you sent me, which are just major testimonials to the value. Because I never really know what sticks out there, Kevin. You know, I wrote the book, it's out there. People, I just define the game, how much people want to play the game, how consistently they want to play it, and what they use it for is totally individual. So let's go with your story about that.
Sure, fair enough. Yeah, I would trace it back to about 2017, so about 8 years ago now. Just happened to be in a Barnes& and Noble locally here in Columbus, Ohio, in the U.S. And I had just sort of entered, I think, a fresh season of interest in personal growth and self-development. I think that came from perhaps a few years prior, feeling a little bit lost, and so I was sort of just, rummaging around, and I saw your book, and it caught my attention. I think it might have been the book I didn't know I needed, but I hadn't heard of it. Something in me said, "You need this." The Art of Stress-Free Productivity spoke to me, and I'm guessing it came from this overwhelmed sense of, lately I have not been getting things done. So I believe what I had is what you often like to call ambient anxiety. In fact, I think that ambient anxiety should probably be the most common medical diagnosis in today's world. So yeah, I mean that's kind of my story, and at some point, I'd love your take on that chronic condition that many people out here are living with that don't even realize it. But ever since, yeah, I sort of just started looking after your content, found you on some podcasts shortly thereafter, and yeah, I've just been kind of in the GTD world ever since. So it's become a huge part of my life, and it's transformed it positively in every facet.
Yeah, well, I came up with ambient anxiety because I used to say, well, what GTD and and GTD is the short that sort of became this brand that ran out from under us. We That was just our shorthand for getting things done when as soon as the book came out in 2001. So that was just our shorthand for it. But somehow, because we used it somewhere, especially the tech world picked it up and spread it globally. So GTD became this. If anybody wants to surf GTD, aside from a few car models that had GTD in them, you would find several 100,000, if not a million, references to GTD, and people have been using it in that way. And you kind of could, as I say, this started out with, well, a lot of people are feeling overwhelmed. The truth is, you sort of will deal with overwhelm. If you were truly overwhelmed, your building caught on fire right now. That could create a sense of overwhelm, but you're going to do whatever you need to do to get out of that situation or to change the situation. So that's when I sort of reconfigured the language that I used about it as the ambient anxiety. It's that stuff that wakes you up at 3 o'clock in the morning. Oh God, I should have, or did I, or oh yeah, I need to. All that stuff that bangs around in your psyche, and I thought, well, that was probably the best way to name it, was this anxiousness that people live with, and they've had it for so long. A lot of people don't even think they could get rid of it or know that there is a way to get rid of it, even if they thought they might be able to. And so uh, it became sort of a popular term for me to use anyway to describe what this addresses and what it deals with. Now, let me be honest, I'm not a motivational speaker. That's not how I make my living. I'm not a habit change expert. There are a lot of people a lot better than that than me. My job was defining what the game is, that if you want to play that game, you get a clear head. And the strategic value of a clear head is infinite. You get to be more present, more creative, more innovative, more strategic, just more present with the people you live with and the people you work with, which can't do anything but help
True.
in terms of all that stuff. So that's how I came up with that phrase. So yeah.
Absolutely. No, I mean, yeah, that paints a perfect picture for it. Um, and yeah, I mean that this idea of clear space. When I think about GTD or I think about why GTD, I do now think about this idea of clear space. As much as people might think that this is about, how many things you can get done, it's like that's not what you're after here. You are more about clear space. And I think what pairs nicely with that is, a big GTD principle or quote of yours, which is that the mind is for having ideas, not for holding them. So for, however you might expand or riff on that, along with kind of the idea of a mind like water, how kind of that may be more what is needed than a bunch of boxes checked sometimes.
Yeah, and people sort of misconstrue. First of all, productivity as a word's got a lot of baggage.
Hmm,
Everybody thinks, "Oh, I work harder, work longer. I got enough to do. I don't need anything else, to do." But the methodology I came up with is not about working harder, working longer, working more. Sometimes you need to do that, but it's really more about how do I create appropriate engagement? And that's another phrase that I don't know if I coined it, but I've started to use it because it's more about, even though I can't finish what I consider a problem, I don't necessarily have the solution, but I need to be appropriately engaged with finding that solution. So appropriate engagement means I get to shut up that monkey in my head. They keep saying, "What are you going to do about it? What are you going to do about it? Are you going to do anything about it? What are you going to do?" And that's the monkey. And sort of quiet the monkey. It doesn't make life easy. Come on, if life was easy, you'd never learn or grow or challenge yourself. Uh, but being appropriately engaged with the challenges that you have and that you have defined. See, the world is fine, by the way. It's not anxious at all. I look out and I go, oh, it's okay. It's only our relationship to the world which creates the stress, creates the conflict, creates the ambient anxiety. So getting appropriately engaged with your world, you know, is it's tricky business. It sounds simple, but especially if you've got a problem with a boss, or you've got a problem with a partner, or you've got a problem with your health or something like that. This doesn't give you the solution to it, but it says, so what are you doing about this to make progress toward discovering if there is anything to do about it? It could be sometimes just getting appropriately engaged with the research you need to do to say, what might I need to do? And if you finish your research and go, there's nothing I can do, that is, it's like gravity. It is, and it's there. You accept it, ignore it, or you play with it. But then you get to quiet that in your head and just say acceptance. So a whole lot of what I teach and have learned over the years was the quality of acceptance. It's kind of the Zen or the Stoic, idea of, look, what you resist, you're stuck with. So whatever you're experiencing in your life, don't resist it. You don't have to like it, but you don't need to. If you resist it, if you push back on it, it's going to push back on you.
Mm.
It will continue to do that as long as you say, oh, this is a problem. Oh, I hate this. I hate this. So worrying and complaining really don't have a place here. I mean, I understand them. I certainly have done them much of my life. But, what they start to signify is, what do I need to do to quiet this thing? Not necessarily to solve it, but what do I need to do to quiet it so it's not bugging me at 3 a.m. in the morning and waking me up, about it. But most people have lived with that so long. Again, as I said before, that they don't even know that there's a difference. They don't even know that that's possible to actually get rid of that noise. But it is.
Absolutely.
Anyway, and where does clear space came from? Well, I didn't have any strategy or any plan of creating the career that happened around this book and around the popularity, the methodology I came up with. I just figured out the methodology over a bit of time as I started my own consulting practice back in the early 1980s, just for myself, so I could stay clear, because I had an experience with meditation, martial arts, and other places where there's this very big practical value to not being distracted, to being really present. I mean, the mindfulness people now have made being present sort of a popular idea, but I learned that 50 years ago, getting a black belt in karate. Like, if 4 people attack you in a dark alley, you don't want 2,000 unprocessed emails somehow taking up mental space.
Right.
You need to be present, and then present, and then present, and then present. And you need to be able to then deal with the current realities in the most elegant way that you can. And so the value of clear space, as my life got more complex and busier with my work, I said, wait a minute, this is kind of junking up clear space for me. And so I began to learn technique by technique by technique from different people who learned various parts of this, and started to use it for myself. And I went, wow, as long as I utilize these techniques myself, and they're not hard. As you know, it's not like a foreign language or some new technology. This is like, duh, write stuff down that's on your head. Duh. Decide what you're going to do about it, if anything. Duh. Organize the results somewhere that you trust you'll see in some appropriate list.
Yeah,
Duh.
advanced common sense, right?
Advanced common sense. Yeah, no kidding, Kevin. But yeah, and as I started to get that for myself, I turned around, and with my consulting clients, and they were mostly small businesses and entrepreneurs that were in my network. And I started to share it with them, and they started to use them. Those that started to use those techniques themselves had the same results I did: more clarity, more focus, more control, more mental space to think about the cool stuff. And so I went, wow. So that became a lot of the core of what we didn't call it coaching back then. I was just consulting to, business owners and entrepreneurs.
Mm-hmm.
And so didn't call it anything. And then, a guy in the big corporate training world saw what I was doing and said, well, David, we need that kind of result in our whole culture. Can you design some sort of a training program around what you've come up with? Well, gee, I don't know. I'll try. So I created a 2-day personal productivity seminar format. We did a pilot program for 1,000 executives and managers in Lockheed, 1983 and 84. And it was the most successful training they'd ever presented. Now, If you'd told me I was in graduate school in Berkeley in 1968 in American intellectual history, if you'd told me that I was going to have a career in the corporate training world, I'd said, come on, what are you smoking? Geez, no, that wasn't on my radar whatsoever. But it turned out that that audience was the ripest audience for what I'd come up with. They were getting they were getting bombarded with organizational change, with flattened organization, with the necessity to pass accountability down the ranks, and all kinds of things that were happening, especially then in aerospace. This was the mid to late 80s, 1980s. And so it became very popular. And a lot of my consulting that I was doing turned into what I would now call coaching, which it really was. I'd have a senior person who was either in a seminar or do something about me and say, David, can you sit next to me desk side and help me implement what you've come up with? And I went, okay. So I wound up not only training hundreds of thousands of people, mostly in the US companies and organizations, over the next 15 or 20 years, but also tens of thousands of hours sitting privately with some of the best, brightest, sharpest people you'd ever meet and walking them through this methodology. So you could have fooled me. This was not in my plan at all. I did not have some sort of strategy. Oh, here's what I'm going to do. And I'm not an entrepreneur. I've really been more of a researcher and then ultimately an educator about what this thing is that I uncovered. Does that fill in some blanks for you?
Absolutely. Plenty of them. It's a fascinating story for sure. Yeah, I've often heard you refer to that whole journey as, not some grand epiphany, but a series of epiphanettes, just little things that got cobbled together over time. So no, it's fascinating. And so I think it would be an appropriate time to dive a little more into the methodology itself. I'll say,
Sure.
David, I don't think there's a single book I've read more times than Getting Things Done. As much as I would love this, to just selfishly use this time to just chat with you and pick your brain, it's like I feel inclined to bring my audience some awareness of what GTD is, just because I know how much it's helped me over the years. I want to reach as many people as I can with it, and I think perhaps a good starting point to lay some foundation for this stuff might be the 5 steps of mastering workflow. Unless you think of a better starting point, but if you can
No, that's
riff
as
on
good as
that,
any.
yeah,
Good as any.
yeah.
And basically, I didn't make these up. I discovered them or I recognized them,
Hmm.
which are the 5 steps we all go through. If you've got a rather complicated, um, complex situation that you're trying to get control of, you're going to go through these 5 steps. Sometimes very quickly, sometimes one at a time. But the 5 steps I began to identify, they're very different. They're different behaviors for each step.
Hmm.
Step one, identify what has your attention about this situation. What's on your mind about this? Da, 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 da. So the first step is a capture step. I need to capture those things that have your attention. You can capture them however you want, but there's no simpler way to capture them than that. I know this is high tech, pen and paper, but they've just discovered pens and they've just discovered paper.
The famous note
Oh
taker
my
wallet.
God. Really? Yeah. Oh my God. And so as long as you get it, that's not my organization. That's a way to grab the stuff that I then need to then go through steps 2 and 3, which is clarify and organize. So step one is to capture, to notice what has your attention. And most people have a lot more attention on a lot more things than they realize because
Hmm.
you can only remember one at a time. But once you start to uncover that, uncork or roll that rock away, you're going to be amazed how many things. Oh, I need to. Oh, I should. Oh, that's something I want to. Oh, yeah. What about? Oh, and da 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 da. And I've spent literally thousands of hours having some of the most sophisticated people you'd ever meet dump their head out. Just write them all down.
Hmm.
Don't organize them. Don't prioritize them. Just capture it. That's step one. So that's step one is just to grab whatever has your attention and put it in some sort of external form that you're not going to lose, but that's still available to you to then go through steps 2 and 3 and 4 and 5. Step two would be to then decide, okay, given what you've written down, what do you need to do about that, if anything? And so clarifying an action required or an outcome desired about whatever you wrote down is a step two. And that's really probably one of the most challenging things for people to get used to. It's a cognitive muscle that you have to train to think about, okay, wait a minute, what's this thing? Oh, new VP. Oh, geez. What do I need to do about that? Yeah, good question. And then good to answer that. What do I need to do about that? Well, I got to check with my CEO and see where this is. Well, okay, how would you check with your CEO? Well, I could send them an email or her an email, or I could have it on a face-to-face conversation. Well, make that decision. Okay. And then what's your final outcome? You get to mark this off as all done when what's true. Whew. When I've then created an appropriate relationship with a new VP. Ah, now you've got a project, right? So clarifying actions and outcomes is not something people are born doing. And I have spent many thousands of hours with very sophisticated people walking them through that, challenging them with that question. What are you going to do about it? What physical action are you going to take? And what's the final outcome you want to have true out of all this? That's the clarify step. Step two. Once you do that, if you came up with something, oh, I need to meet with, I need to send, I need to research, do whatever, then it would be, okay, where are you going to, if you can't do that right now, where are you going to park some reminder that that's something you still need to do? And that's where organization comes in, step three. How do I need to organize appropriate reminders of the things I've decided I need to do about the things that have my attention? And I know this is probably to some people going to be sound like a duh. And in a way it is because it's that simple, but it's not that simple to necessarily do something. See, that requires a muscle that a lot of people are not used to using. It's called think.
Yeah.
You actually have to think about your stuff. It
Yeah.
doesn't automatically show up, in terms of handling a situation or to get it off your mind. But what you have to do is make the conscious decisions. What does this mean? And then where do I park a result I can't finish in the moment? And finish in the moment, by the way, as you know, one of the great principles of GTD is if you come up with an action step, you can actually finish in 2 minutes. You should do it right then. I don't care how important or unimportant you think it is. If you're ever going to do it at all, it would take you more energy to look at it again than it would to be to finish it right then.
Mm.
And I've had a lot of executives tell me it was worth the total price of admission, just the 2 minute rule. Become Teflon. Don't let it sit around. I'll bet most people listening or watching this right now, if you walk through your apartment or your house or wherever you live, you'll probably find light bulbs that would take you less than 2 minutes to change. You would find all kinds of things just
Guilty.
in your little environment
Yeah.
that it wouldn't take you but less than 2 minutes to actually get that thing off your mind, then clear that space. So anyway, that's the organize. And then step four would be reflect. Once you create a list of all your projects, and most people have between 80 and 100 or 30 and 100 projects, including all the personal ones, get tires in my car, hire the VP, research a new streaming video program, uh, get my kids into the right school for the next semesters. Those are projects. Those are things you were trying that you need to do things about in order to be able to finish them. So keeping track of all those, but then you need to make sure you review those 30, 40, 50, 60 projects that you come up with once you define what a project is. And my methodology has a fairly radical definition of project. Anything you can finish within the next few months, that one action will complete. So that's a pretty broad definition, including all the personal stuff you got that you need to finish or handle or fix or, how many things around your apartment or house are broken that you need to replace?
A handful.
And those are all projects. How much of your body needs fixing? Do you need a new tooth? Do you need, look, I'll be 80 soon. So I got all kinds of things, all kinds of projects I've had in terms of getting cataract surgeries, getting hearing aids, getting new teeth, getting all kinds of stuff because that happens, that just goes with the territory. But each one of those was projects. And so I had to keep track of those, decide what was next about them. Didn't mean that I could fix it. I'm not a dentist. I'm not a, hearing. I'm not a. I'm not a surgeon that can do cataract surgery. Uh, so I'm not the person to do those things, but I'm the person that needs to get appropriately engaged with somebody who can do those things and will.
Mhm.
Right? So that's the reflection process. Is then I need to then reflect on that whole inventory. But anytime I've had an executive create their list of 50, 60, 70 projects that were really on their plate, every one of them changed their priorities for the next 2 weeks. I didn't tell them. I didn't say, well, here's what you should do. They just did that and went, oh my God, now I see, here's what I need to do. And so and you could speak to that too, Kevin, if that was the same experience you had. So once you
Absolutely.
start to objectify all this, it makes it a whole lot easier for you to make maybe sometimes tough decisions about how you allocate your resources, how you prioritize. And then step five, I mean, so that's the reflect, that's stage 4 is reflect on all that stuff you've captured, your inventory, that you've externalized and objectified out there about all your commitments. And then step 5 is then engage. How do I now then allocate my attention and my activity based upon what I've just seen in terms of all those options? So that's the 5 steps of capture, clarify, organize, reflect, engage. But you do that if you clean up your kitchen, if you've got guests coming over.
True.
You know, you do all 5. You do them very fast, maybe. But the first thing is you notice what's off. What you capture. Wait a minute, this is not right. That shouldn't be there. That's in the wrong place. And then you decide what is that? Oh, that's spices. Oh, that's a dirty dish. Oh, that's a clean dish. Then you clarify. Then you organize. You put dirty dishes in the dishwasher. You put good food back in the fridge. You put spices where spices go. You then organize, and then you step back and reflect on the situation and the time, and then you pull out butter and melt it. So, and you can do all that in a few minutes, but they are very discrete activities and very discrete things that you need to do to appropriately engage with the situation.
Absolutely. Yeah, and to your point, I do think it's a radical idea for people to think of projects in a GTD sense. Most people traditionally call a project something like, a home renovation or the construction of a building or some big business initiative. But the fact that it's a little bit subtler was definitely an adjustment. And to that point, also, the fact that you can't do a project. If you could kind of expand on the idea, you can't do a project just as is. Take some more thought than that.
Yeah. Well, you have to decide what doing means. So the way you get things done is you decide what doing looks like and what done means. So it's like, what does done in terms of your home renovation mean? Are you ever really done? Well, you could probably get to some point where you say, okay, now it's on cruise control, right? But then you've got all kinds of multiple projects that are sub-projects that are part of the renovation. Oh, we need to get an architect. Oh, we need to design what kind of kitchen we want. Oh, we need to,
As a new
there's,
homeowner, they're piling up, David.
yeah, I'll bet. And so what does doing look like and where does it happen? Is that an email to send? Is that a phone call to make? Is that a website to search? And that discrete things. And very few people have trained themselves to think down to the most discrete level of what a real physical, visible next action is on most of their stuff. So they haven't finished thinking. See, your brain is keeps spinning because, well, what are you going to do about it? 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 Right? Well, once you decide what you're going to do about it and you park the result appropriately, your brain goes, okay, wow,
Yeah,
appropriately engaged, off my mind. Doesn't mean finished, but it's not something that bugs me because I've already finished my thinking about it. So a whole lot of what my methodology is about is how do I need to finish my thinking about this thing that has my attention?
sure.
What does done mean? And what does doing look like? And where does it happen?
Absolutely.
But that's a
Um,
muscle you actually have to train. And it took me a lot of years to really realize why it was so difficult for people to sort of catch that and actually start to do it. And then at some point, I got the research that showed me those things come from two different parts of your brain. The outcome part comes from the vision part. That's the front forebrain. That's for, the strategy, the time, it's the one that thinks about and plans and does all that. And then there's the limbic part of your brain that says, okay, what do I need to do physically right now? You know, and those actually are two very different things. They're two different parts of your brain that you have to engage. So it actually is a muscle that you have to train to get yourself used to thinking about both those things, outcome and action. But outcome and action are the keys to productivity. What are you trying to produce, and how do you allocate or reallocate your resources to make that happen? So again, I didn't make that up. I just recognized it. That's what we do. But I then figured out and objectified the behaviors that you need to take so that you actually implement that principle.
Sure. If your goal is to relax on a vacation and you pull out your laptop and you don't relax, that's an unproductive vacation.
Exactly. Exactly.
I think it's also a good time to bring up someone, an author that you've recommended over time, and gotten to know a bit yourself, Oliver Berkman. I've read two of his more recent books. This one here, 4,000 Weeks, and then also Meditations for Mortals. Now, The Antidote is next on my list. I know that's the big one that you've recommended over time. I got to get to that. But I couldn't help but notice, as I recently read this, parallels to GTD. Now, specifically, one thing that's really jumped out to me is seeing lists more as a menu. Now that's basically what the action lists of GTD get at. It's your options. It's not saying let's do it all right now like most people feel when they look at their lists. It's here's your options to get to when you can or choose to. And to kind of what you were saying earlier, you got to use your mind to get things off your mind. So how do folks make decisions on what actions to take? It's like you mean to tell us after we get all our lists dialed in, we still have to think? Isn't my system supposed to handle that for me? I just want to crank widgets, David. I want to automate life. It's like once we have our lists, how do we decide what to do?
Well, you have to decide that,
Mm,
and that's why part of getting things done is the horizons of focus that I identified. There's 6 horizons that you have commitments about, whether you're conscious of them or not. The biggest one is what is purpose? Why are you here? What's on your list on purpose? What's not on purpose on your list? So that'd be a prime driver of how you make a decision. But then that not knowing what your life purpose is not going to help you decide which email to write first tonight. It might, a little bit. But then you're going to need to say, well, wait a minute, where do I want to be like 3 to 5 years from now? That would be the vision level of commitment that you've got. What kind of career do you want? What kind of lifestyle do you want? What kind of, where are you going? And you've made decisions based upon that stuff from what I hear, based upon a vision of where you want to be, how you want to be that caused some significant change or some changes that you needed to make in your life. And so that's the vision side. That may help you. If you know what your vision is, where you want to be 5 years from now, relationship wise, career wise, lifestyle wise, that may help you even a little bit more decide which email to write first tonight. But then you might get to say, well, yeah, but what are the things I need to finish over the next year or two? That's goals. That would be that level. Oh, we need to move. We need to get a new thing. I need to set up a whole new career path or a whole new thing to do professionally, right? And that's the goal side. And then you have the horizon that says, okay, what are all the things that you need to maintain or keep healthy so that you can do any of that? That's areas of focus and responsibility, health and vitality, relationships, fun, finances. All those things don't take care of themselves. You actually have to ensure that those are okay given whatever you're doing. And so that's that level. And then you have, okay, now what are all the projects I might need to do about my health or about my finances or about the renovation or about the house, right? Then you have that's the project level of commitments. And then you have all the stuff you need to do about any of those. So you may have 40, 50 projects, especially moving into a new place. And you may have, then most people have if they're really honest about all their commitments and really think about what are all the things they need to do about any of those, most people have between 100 and 200 next actions right now, right now. So that's not a small list. So then, which one of those horizons do you think would be the most important for helping you make decisions about what to do on your list and what not to do on your list? I don't know. You're the one who'd have to tell me. But the truth is, we've coached so many hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of very senior people in a lot of these organizations. And for most of them, the big vision stuff is not the big issue. They already got that. That's what kind of got them where they are. Their big issue is the car that needs fixing and the kids that need to get into college and all the other stuff down at the more ordinariness of life level that's really in the way of them having a clear head to be moving on the bigger stuff. But that, again, that's quite unique to the individual.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that there's one way to potentially make it a little easier to choose what to pick from that 100 to 200, item list, and that's this idea of contexts. So, would love to expand on the idea and importance of taking action based on context. Sure helps you narrow things down a little bit.
Yeah, well, a very simple idea is if you keep a grocery list, you don't want to look at everything on that grocery list every time you go out for errands or every time you have an agenda to go over with somebody. Right? You only want to see that when you're going to the grocery store,
Hmm.
right? So you pull the post-it off the fridge that's been keeping track. Ideally, you've been keeping track of, whatever it is you need to get at the grocery store, whoever's going. And that's context. I don't need to look at all that. That's why I have, I don't know, 6 or 7 active lists of my projects. It's not complex. Stuff I need to do at the computer, stuff I need to talk to my wife about, stuff, errands that I need to run. And those are different kind of contexts. When I go out for errands, I don't need to see anything other than what I've told myself I need to do when I'm out and about, because I can't do anything else.
True.
I'm in that context. Got an at-home context. There's stuff I can only do in our apartment here where I live.
Hmm.
No need to see that when I'm out doing other stuff. I just need to see that when I'm here and have any discretionary time. Say, okay, do I need to sharpen my knives right now? Do I need to wax our cutting boards right now? Do I need to, you know, whatever those things are that show up on my at-home list.
Absolutely. I recently learned that at some point you developed a creative writing context. So I was, as a musician and a creative myself, I was highly interested in that. So I'd love to hear more about that and kind of how you realize that contexts may not just be limited to physical surroundings.
Yeah, it also may be your psychological surroundings. Wow, I'm in the space right now where I want to be creative or I have the room to be creative. And so give me all the creative stuff that requires that kind of room to do. But you can have, golly, over all these 40 plus years that I've been doing this work, I've seen people come up with all kinds of very interesting contexts. One very sharp lady in London, her contexts were how much service can I provide to myself and to other people? She's a very service oriented person.
Wow.
So she said, so she looked at her list called which one of these things creates more value for myself as a service or for other people that I know or engage with as a service. So she looked at it that way. So there's no right or wrong about that. It's just, well, okay, that's something that may work for people. And I've never seen any two people who really dug into, probably if I looked at your lists and your system, that I would see something very, very different than almost anybody else because you've customized that for yourself. You've thought which things make a difference for you. When my wife and I moved into it should have been a tear down, but it turned out it was a nice little country cottage that we moved into in Southern California many, many years ago. And, the number of things there were to do around that property and house were just infinite. And so I had my at home list was huge. Uh, but what I would do is to say, okay, this week, then to your point, the menu. So what do I want to work on this weekend? okay, well, here's a project for the garden, or here's a project for building the fireplace, or here's, whatever it was. So then it became much easier to then engage with all of those things as opposed to walking around and feeling totally overwhelmed by all the things that we weren't doing,
Mm.
that we should be doing. So, and it was really the sort of the move in version of at home. So there was some just standard at home stuff to do, but then there was the move in, get our yard and our house on cruise control in terms of those kinds of things. And that became a separate list. So again, yeah, I've had creative writing various times as a separate aspect because there were times that I thought, no, I don't want to look at my creative stuff I need to do. At the same time, I look at a lot of the business stuff that I needed to do that were more ordinary and day-to-day, kinds of actions that I needed to take even when I was at home and at my computer.
Mm-hmm.
So it was nice to even split my at computer stuff with the creative stuff at computer so I could offload those off those other lists. Otherwise, it was totally overwhelming, even for me. I'd look at that list and I'd see a bunch of creative things on there as well as just some ordinary, just day-to-day kind of activity that I needed to do. And so splitting that out just made it a lot easier.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think it's so cool how, highly individual this stuff can become because I think a lot of people that pick this stuff up at first, myself included, which I mean, this is the book, by the way, that you've seen in every room of my house. It moves around daily. The revised version of Getting Things Done, published in 2015. But people think they have to follow this, to a T. So it's cool to hear how much flexibility there is. And to your point, yeah, when I'm cranking through the business of life stuff on my computer, I don't want to see start drafting second verse of song or brainstorm creative ideas for Christmas gifts. It's a different mode. So I have taken your creative writing context, stolen or borrowed it, and it's helped me immensely. And speaking of creative and creativity, talk about how you realized at some point, you know what, this stuff isn't just for the fast track corporate professional. It was originally developed for, but that it can help all types of people. And maybe an example to kickstart that would be Evan Taubenfeld. He was Avril
Yeah.
Lavigne's guitarist, and the musician in me loved listening back to your old talks with him. How it helped him take more songs started to songs finished. So how is this thing so universal?
Because they're universal things.
Yeah.
I don't care what it is you're doing. You need to capture what's got your attention about it. You need to decide what you're going to need to do about it. You need to organize some sort of reminders or triggers about it so you see them in the right context so that then you are engaging appropriately to them. So that's going to happen when we fly to Jupiter in 2090. It happens at your kitchen. And it's all the same stuff. I didn't make these things up. I just recognized the basic fundamental principles of how you get stuff done with as little effort as possible. So could have fooled me.
Absolutely.
It could have fooled me that it would, the grace of all the powers that be. I'm able to thank that I was able to uncover something that was so valuable for so many people in so many different ways. So,
Mhm.
like a wow, because nothing in this hurts. So I think any aspect of this that you implement is going to improve your conditions, improve your life and your work.
Absolutely. And one stone that I feel like can't go unturned today is the infamous weekly review, which pairs with that fourth step of that mastering workflow, which is to reflect. Now, I'm a GTD nerd, so as a Connect member, I like to go back to those early GTD podcasts of yours from like 2007. In fact, the other day, I did one of your and Kelly's guided weekly reviews from 2010. Now, I don't get it done every week, but I had to eat my own dog food this week leading up to this. So, if you could talk about the power of the weekly review and why it can be such a tough habit to implement. I should say that it seems like there's a sense of overwhelm with having to do the whole review that I think holds people back, including myself. So,
Yeah.
if you could speak to
Well,
that.
one of the ways that I speak to that is if you're not doing a weekly review, you're trying to do it all the time.
Oh, yeah, guilty. Yeah.
Right. You're always wondering, am I doing the right thing? Am I doing the right thing? Wait a minute, what am I missing? What am I missing? And so, 6.5 days, you need to give yourself 6.5 days of total freedom to not worry about what you ought to be doing because
Mm.
you spent, 2 or 3 hours at the end of the week looking at all that stuff and deciding, wait a minute, these are the things that I really need to focus on, and all the rest can wait. And but you're not going to, if you don't do that, you're always trying to do that. So the weekly review allows you to actually relax and get a little crazy. See, people meet me and they're totally surprised. They think I'm going to be corporate and buttoned down and anal retentive and all that. And they go, God, you're nothing like that, baby. And I go, no, I'm not. I like to follow my intuitive hunches and be free. That's how I came up with GTD, was how to stay that way. But you can't stay that way unless you're really managing your life with those kinds of principles in such a way that you're appropriately engaged with it all, as opposed to the ambient anxiety, which is what most people are experiencing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a quote of yours that pairs so perfectly with everything you just summarized is that any reviewing is better than none at all. Don't let yourself keep from getting back on the game because you don't feel like you're doing it 100%. So that's one thing that held me back, is it's like, oh, now that I have the skills and the toolkit to be able to do GTD, it gives me some sense of, well, I've got to grab the whole inventory, when it's like, no, just a little bit might be better than nothing, because it
Yeah,
gets
no
momentum
kidding.
going,
No
and it
kidding.
just helps build the
Well, it's
habit.
like exercise or diet. You don't have to do the whole thing. Just do
Yeah,
something,
one
that
set of
kind of moves you
push-ups.
in that direction. Yeah.
Yeah,
What the
I,
heck?
I gotta say, I am curious how your weekly reviews have evolved, because I get the idea that it's probably become a little more intuitive for you over time, and less here's my exact time always. So, if anything you'd like to share
Yeah.
about
No,
yours.
it's whenever I feel like I need to look.
Yeah,
Again, at age 80, I don't have the complexity of a lifestyle that I used to when I was 60 or when I was 43. So back then, there were times in my life and work where I had to do something like a weekly review 2 or 3 times a day to come up from my head in the sand and look around and go, wait a minute, where the hell am I? And what do I do this afternoon? So a lot of it depends on the complexity and speed of things that are happening in your life and the speed of change that's happening in your life. But my life is not changing that dramatically. I still have some pretty big projects, um, that I still need to work on and just need to review how am I doing about that. Catherine just reminded me, for instance, I'm going to a GTD retreat in Norway in February. She said, David, how do you have airlines set up for that? I went, oh, geez, okay. So there's another thing. And if I had done a thorough review of calendar upcoming, I'd go, oh yeah, gotta call KLM, gotta set that up. So I still have, I don't get away from any of this stuff. Talking about eating your own dog food, I still have to, I still have an in basket. I just had a meeting this afternoon with some stuff that I printed out that I need to then do some stuff with. So I just threw this in my in tray, and I'll decide, what exactly I need to do about it next. I still do that. I still have places for reference, right at hand, and some that are deeper in case I don't need things right at hand, but still need to keep. I don't get away from any of this. If I want to keep a clear head, I still have to do everything that we've been talking about.
yeah. And it's funny to think that, doing all of this is what ultimately helps you be your most authentic self. From what I understand, you are the self-proclaimed laziest guy that you've ever met. So, but how is that possible? Productivity and laziness are polar opposites, David, right? I mean, it's
Well,
let you be lazy, huh?
you can translate efficiency to lazy.
Yeah, sure.
I just hate to waste time doing
Yeah.
something again. If I could do it once and not have to do it again. I mean, I'm just a big not waste time guy. So, and that also could be why I'm so lazy. So I like to get to the place where I don't have to think about anything.
hmm Yeah,
You
absolutely. Yeah.
know.
It's,
By the way, I just grabbed it. I've been collecting a lot of my own quotes that I've come up with over all these years. I'm going to put those together in a book. Uh,
yes.
and
Here we go.
one of them is from an aunt of mine who was over 90. She must have been 94, 95. And one of the things she said, which I just think is brilliant, she said, the problem with doing nothing is you don't know when you're done.
Mm. That's good. That's good. I
When
like
have
it.
I done enough nothing? That's a good question.
Yeah. Yeah. True. I'm excited for that, and that'll be something I can add to the collection here. I keep bringing books. If you're watching visually, you'll see I've got some of David's books here, and a couple more that I don't yet have. But yes, speaking of not wanting to waste any time, we're coming up on that maybe with about 10 minutes left or so. So just a few more things I'd like to touch on. I think the last thing worth getting into GTD wise is the someday maybe list. I'd like to talk about the power of it and it's easy to feel like anything you put in this list is a black hole that you'll never see again. At least that's my experience. And in fact, getting this interview with you, that lived on my someday maybe list for years, but I was held back because I wanted to be, ready or at some level of implementation with this stuff. But until I realized I'd never be ready because GTD is it's not a finish line. It's a lifelong practice. So I figured, what the heck? The next action was 2 minutes. Let's activate it. And here we are. So what is so elusive or mysterious about someday maybe?
I don't know. I really don't know.
Mhm.
I think it's people willing to say, here's all the stuff I would like to do, but don't have the money or time or resources or space to do it yet, but I don't want to lose the idea.
Mhm.
But that's a pretty common sense idea. But most people don't do that. They don't capture the places they'd like to visit, the food they'd like to cook, the movies they'd like to see, the books somebody said they should read. And all those are versions of kind of someday maybe. you know, I'm not going to do any of that right now, but if I'm going to the bookstore, let me look at this list of things that have been recommended, or if I'm going to go stream, Netflix or whatever, let me go see movies that I might like to see. So Catherine and I made a list of all the cool movies that we would watch again, you know.
Nice.
Bandits. Oh, I love Bandits. Butch Cassidy and Sundance Kid, And there were so many there, and those things are like, well, I don't have any pressure that I have to go do those right now, but they're options. So they're options to take advantage of. You know, our buddy Evan Talbenfeld, I don't know if you remember his story that some of the best ideas about stuff they were going to put on their next album showed up while they were doing the first album.
Mm.
So while they were recording, he kept a whiteboard up there that then, and when they had a good idea about a song to do that wasn't what they were currently doing, he'd go up and capture it, put it up there. So it became like a someday maybe, but then that's why he was able to produce, an album much faster than any other way because he had the raw material. So capturing raw material that you might want to use could look like a lot of different things, and so that's the version of someday maybe, and it's a pretty creative thing to do. You know, a lot of people. I had a very sophisticated guy who was one of the top business consultants, at one of the top consulting firms in the U.S. And he'd done my seminar a couple of times. And the last time he did it, he kind of got the idea someday maybe. And he said that was like the biggest relief for him because he kept coming up with so many cool ideas to do with his clients that he just sort of overwhelmed himself with that. But he said, once I could create a someday maybe list, well, that's something I might want to do with this client, or that would be something cool to do. He said it totally freed up a whole lot of his creative energy to be able to then not stop having ideas because he felt like he had too many. Right.
Absolutely.
So it could look like a lot of different things for people, but it's a very creative process, and it should be fun. Sit down and make a list of all the things you might want to do, the classes you'd like to take, the food you'd like to cook, the places you'd like to go. Any of those things have been kind of lurking around in there. And a whole lot of the stuff in my life started on a someday maybe list.
Absolutely.
And then at some point, I looked at it and I went, time to activate that. I moved it from someday maybe to a live project and then actually got an action item about it. So the cool thing about someday maybe is you don't need to have any action items about any of these things. It's just something to look at on some consistent basis to say, is it something I should activate yet or not? Or I'm okay with it just sitting there. And probably every 2 or 3 or 4 years, I've just dumped my someday maybe list and did a new one. Just because they got so old. I said, that's not that exciting anymore.
Use that.
You
Yeah.
know? forget it.
Yeah. I have to imagine one of those things that may have lived on your list at some point was move to Europe. You live in Europe these days, so tell us about where you are and what led you there. What's cool about it, or and why was it right for you guys ultimately?
Yeah, well, we wanted to leave the U.S. actually, not for any political reason, but just because we felt the U.S. is so U.S. centric in terms of its thinking. Most U.S. people don't even have passports, so
Mm,
they don't think much more outside the boundaries of the U.S. And my wife and I both are. She's the daughter of Scottish immigrants that came over after World War II, and so we didn't have any particular. And I'd been traveling so much anyway. We didn't have any particular in allegiance, if you will, to the U.S. I mean, I love the U.S. It got me where I was at that time, and my life was becoming a lot more global and a lot more virtual. So it became a lot easier to think about that. And Catherine and I saw people a little older than us that were looking a lot more sedentary than we wanted to be because we were both active and both relatively healthy. So we said, okay, time for a new adventure. And so, and we don't have kids, and that made it a lot easier. And so we said, throw a dart. And so it could have been anywhere as long as I was near a good airport. It could have been Milan, could have been Stockholm, could be Berlin, could have been Kyoto. We're both serious Japanophiles, but that's just too far away from everywhere else. So we said, okay, Europe seems to be the best place. And we're in Amsterdam. We've been here for 12 years. So we'd been here 2 or 3 times and love the city. It's about as far north and as dark as Catherine wanted to go. Uh, and we love the city. We still do. It's a beautiful place. And by the way, anybody listening or watching this, you never want to come. Stay away. Go away.
right, right.
No, Amsterdam is lovely, and no, so we intended to stay. We were a little naive, thinking, well, we could spend 3 months in Amsterdam, 3 months in Berlin, 3 months in Milan, 3 months in London. Nah, if
Hmm.
you're staying longer than 3 months anywhere and you don't want to look over your shoulder to be illegal, you have to go get residency. You have to get that stuff. So there are a lot of hoops to jump through to do that. But we've done all that. So
Nice.
yeah, so we just unhooked from the US and we love Amsterdam. We love the Netherlands. It's a very open country, relatively speaking. And especially these days, much more globally focused, much more uh, open and um, international. I think there are 172 nationalities officially, living in Amsterdam anyway. So
Yeah.
we're in a neighborhood that's full of Jewish people, Japanese people, people from India, people from the UK. So, and I like that. I like that variety. I like that uh, sort of the mix, if you will, globally.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if I ever happen to be in Amsterdam, you'll be getting an email from me. I hope that we can do this again someday. My
Yeah,
wife and I do have our passports. Never been to Europe, but that might be a cool thing to add to our someday maybe list. But
yeah, cool.
in the interest of your time, David, anything else that you'd like to say to tie a bow on all this? Any advice you'd like to give someone new, guidance for, someone who's ready to get their life in order but might feel like this
Yeah,
is all daunting?
absolutely.
Hey, jump in. The
Uh,
water's fine. How can we
yeah,
ease
yeah.
people in?
I have one very simple admonition to everybody. Stop using your head as your office.
Hmm.
Your head is a crappy office. Your head did not evolve to remember, remind, prioritize, or manage relationships between more than 4 things. That's it. That's cognitive science research now, by the way. I sort of knew that your head's for having ideas, not holding them. I learned that 40 years ago. But now the cognitive scientists have basically proven that. You're trying to keep more than 4 things in your head to remember, remind, prioritize, or whatever, or manage the relationships between them. You're going to not take a test as well. You're not going to be as present with your kids. You're not going to be, you're going to be suboptimal in terms of your cognitive abilities. And that's just, don't shoot the messenger, guys. That's science now. So that's my one admonition, folks. Get it out of your head, however you need to do that. And we've talked about all the details of that.
Sure. Well, if people
Okay,
want to
Kevin.
keep Yeah, if people want to keep up with you, the latest with you, GTD, or just check out more resources to get started. Anywhere to point people?
Sure, gettingthingsdone.com. Just go to the website. You'll see that. You can sign up for a free newsletter where we have, which is very cool, stuff I write regularly. If you want to go on the YouTube and see, as you probably have there, I've got interviews and podcasts and things like that that you'll find. Just do David Allen search on podcast and you'll or on YouTube, and you'll find tons of stuff if you like to just kind of snack on whatever all this is about.
Perfect. Well, David, thanks again. You've been a hugely positive influence on my life. I can't wait to keep spreading your work and your message. And I hope you and Catherine have a Merry Christmas. And also, hey, a happy early birthday to you. I had to do my homework. Happy early birthday to you as well. You guys
Thank you.
take care.